Hey everyone, welcome back to Trail Talk. For a special TrailCon episode, I'm joined by Adam Copeland from Tantrums and Krissi Polentz, the co-host of many Trail Talk episodes. Good to see you're back, and we're also here in your hometown, nearly. How far away are we from Truckee?
I'm about 20 minutes away if there's nobody on the road
Cool.
at 4 a.m. this morning.
What time are you on the road tomorrow?
Oh, 3 a.m.? I don't know.
Yeah, same. We're going to dig into things that we saw at TrailCon. We were at the during day one in the kind of the sit down corporate style presentation slideshows. It was a little bit sleepy at times, and then you were exhibiting on day two, um, which was pretty cool. I think I like day two. How did you feel about it?
No, I think it was an interesting collection of consumers where you have racers, media, some pros, and it's sort of a hodgepodge of like people showing up and being interested in your product. I thought it was really a fruitful afternoon.
Yeah, and you did like a test thing for everyone on site.
Yeah, so the way I like to show up for consumers, I really like to think about moving different because all consumers like are being spoken to the same way, I think, by most of these brands. So show up in a way unexpected. Most people show up to these race expos thinking about what can I get for free, or let me try on the new shoe. And as a brand that some people either have never heard of or they barely heard of, just drawing people in, getting a little bit of attention, doing some education. So I did, speaking to education, I did a classroom. So you can see my whiteboard back here. It's a little worse for wear, but really setting up an old school classroom with desks, sitting people down at the desk, giving them a test, and then while they're taking the test, I talk to them about the Crest Six and testing them on knowledge of Western states. I had Scott Jurk came by, Hayden Hawks came by, Corinne Malcolm, Tim Tullison, and Aaron Shimmons came by.
Yeah.
David Lamb, all the homies. It was a great afternoon. I had a great time. I got fried. My neck is just burnt to all.
You were one of the only stalls without the awning thing. And I think I preferred it because of that as well. Like you stood out for a couple of different reasons, and you weren't just in the branded, um, you know,
Pop up tent.
yeah, pop up, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, you got to be inside the space, not like outside looking into the space.
yeah. You were just like there, and people couldn't help but notice it. They didn't have there was no walls of entry,
Yeah.
which was the same, which was not the case for some of them.
Yeah, oftentimes the booths are set up kind of like a cashier's desk where like this is my side and that's your side outside. Bring people into the world of tantrums. I think having a concept that people can grasp rather than a retail space where people can buy. And I think maybe that hurts my sales a little bit, but I think long term it really gives people that something they can trust and hold on to as a brand.
Yeah. And then day one, what was your like high level of how the day went? Did you get sleepy like me?
Shockingly, I didn't. I did use one of the sessions in the middle of the day to get our short run in, and that really helped me. Because usually I would hit that afternoon slump as a non-coffee drinker for sure. But I think I was able to get through it okay. It was definitely like one of those things where you're sitting in the same chair in the same room all day and you really want to be engaged, but it's hard for sure.
Yeah. Let's crack into some of the actual sessions. So they were split up into, a multitude of different sort of topics. But the first one of the day for me, I think maybe I came in about 10, was the Warner Brothers Discovery. And there was the guy from Golden Trail Salomon, Warner Brothers Discovery guy was there. And one of the first notes that I made was that they said that they're there for, they're in the sport for the long term and they're interested in the various distances. And actually, during the lunch break, or maybe it was the dinner break or whatever it was, that guy was at my table alongside Travis from Free Trail. And he was saying he's interested in all of the distances and how can they wrap the distances into this kind of, I assume, 2 hour format that they're doing with Golden Trail. So, I mean, what do you think about that?
Was you referring to Drew Hart? I think his last name's Hartman. Yeah, he's definitely somebody who's really passionate about the sport, and you see the hard work he puts in to translate that to the media side. I think we're inclined maybe to question like what the WB, for example, is in it for, because you see them as traditional media and you think of like Solomon and Golden Trail as wanting to create like just for TV race distances.
Well, no, it was a WBD guy that said this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to like hear, I guess, multiple sides saying that, because I think we have the perception, as I was saying, that Golden Trail just wants made for TV distances and times. And so I'm curious what their plan is to actually make that a reality, because right now it is that short period races. They were saying, they also said that session like under 2 hours has been really good for them for live TV. So, I'd be curious what the strategy is there.
Okay, yeah. What's your opinion on the rapid Naylor distances? Like, look at the kind of fanfare around Cocodona. The guy's got the bug about this. I also need to put out there that all of this was a good conversation, but then when he turned and walked away, he has an Iron Man calf tattoo.
No comment. No, I think for me, I really think this sport is growing. TV is just the broadest point of media, right? And right now we've been in niche media with Free Trail being our, Free Trail and Mountain Outpost being our main media sources. And as I often say, like being a fan of ultra trail is hard. You have to work very hard, or just trail even sub ultra. It's still hard to be a fan.
Don't say sub ultra on this show. Although we're in America, it's okay.
Ultra people over here.
All right, this one episode only on American soil. We can say sub ultra.
What would you call it?
Short distance.
Short distance racing.
It's already had a name, but this is another debate.
But I think it's just growing up, right? And big media is going to test and learn. That's what they all do. And just like Mountain Outpost test and learn with what works with live streams, like everyone's going to test and learn, figure out what consumers want. Consumers will end up guiding this whichever way they want to consume the product. And I think for me, it's like the more people get their eyes on the sport and become fans of it, it's more racing, more money for the pros. People can focus on this as a full-time job. Brands can invest more. We can have more than just Hoka sponsoring every single race, or Solomon. Where's On? They're seemingly coming into the sport strong, but where's the On sponsored circuit?
Yeah. I think that's an interesting point, and it's going in the right direction. It's, for the most part, I think everyone has the right intentions, and good things are coming from it. Another interesting point that the BT guy said was that he wants to work together with all of the brands, not just Solomon and Golden Trail, to help propel the sport forward with Brisbane 2032 in mind. So I thought that was interesting.
I like the idea of like 100-miler going in the background for like a day while other races while other things happen. You check in and you're just like, oh, Killian's going through blah blah blah, and like this is, you check in on the race and you come back and forth as you go back between fencing and ultra and badminton ultra and canoeing and ultra.
But imagine if there was, like a super long, or as Diva would say, a super ultra going on in the background. Like a 200-miler or something longer than 100 miles, something that's going to span days, that could be just simmering in the background in the Olympics. Doesn't have to be front and center, but they can jump in and out of it at various times, or even like the backyard ultra format would suit that kind of thing. It doesn't inspire me, but I still think it could fit in there.
I mean, the Olympics takes over like 7 channels on the TV, and they have digital channels as well. It easily could run like a Mountain Outpost style, like nonstop coverage for something like that. But my fear would be that it would just be such a small entrance list, because you only have 2 people from every country. And so, obviously you have 12 countries in Europe, maybe they're bringing people, in the US and Canada. It's like sort of a smaller list than you'd see at Cocodona. Even there, you have 300 people and, pretty deep entrance list.
And there's maybe already a format for it with the backyard that people have to like race their way into that by country.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not trying to push that agenda at all. It's not a format that interests me, but it's still cool. Still trail running, still ultra running, so. Right, let's move on. We have limited time today because we've got something important to get to on the hour. But next up was the creator economy chat on day one. I made a couple of notes about this. Um, the one of the early ones was I had to tap, I think it was Sean beside me and say, "Who's such and such?" These were running influencers that I didn't even know.
Yeah.
I knew a couple of the people out of the five on stage, and the first question I'll ask is, why was Andy Glaze not there? Is he not like he gets more eyes on him than some of the brands in our sport? He's a trail runner through and through. He's the biggest influencer in trail running. And it would also have been cool for him to be here. It's in his state as well.
I mean, I drove up 7 hours. It's close.
Yeah, because you live close to Andy, right?
Relatively.
Yeah.
Same area. Yes. I think, Andy should be here. Andy is a megaphone for our brand as a sport. Nobody reaches more ears, really, especially like that is like ultra only.
Yeah. And in the same vein as what we were saying earlier about, we're on this trajectory and most people, this general feeling is everyone has the right intentions. Andy ticks those boxes as well. Like, he's just a nice guy doing his shit and putting it online.
Well, it's not an ad. It's not, none of his work is an ad either. It's all
Yeah.
so just like,
It's like anti-ad.
Yeah, I think there were some misses on that panel. I agree that there were a few people that I didn't know or felt like were maybe more like broadly running influencers, that maybe toe the line between road and trail. Um, I was just thinking, like, honestly, if anything, I'd rather see also like an Allie O who she toes that line, but like she's captivated an audience that other people haven't been able to, and she's had success and she's relatable and she's also, she's trying to push herself in new ways. And I think that would have been an inspiring story to see, someone like that.
Yeah, no, that's a good shout actually. And she was here the weekend before for Broken Arrow. Yeah, I would like to see Alio here as well. And then I forget the name of the influencer, Murtivator?
Oh, Myrna?
Myrna, yes.
Yeah.
Myrna said something interesting. She said, let creators be themselves. Brands are taking creators and giving them such a tight brief, put on all our clothes. And I think it's gone too far one way. And I'll throw this out and then we can chat about it. But one of the things that stood out for me when she said that was, I think Satisfy pushed it too far.
Mm.
Like, you don't know who has vibes and who just has tattoos and Satisfy gear on because, you just don't. Like, part of vibes is personality and you're not learning or getting to know some of the people on the Satisfy team. But then there are standout people that we do know. You probably name 3 or 4 different people. So what do you think of like let creators be themselves and give them more of the creative control?
I mean, you look at Andy. I think Andy is a perfect example of someone that is authentic to themselves, not taking the dollars, and his megaphone is as loud as possible. And it overshadows. I mean, the only other person that overshadows Andy's voice is Goggins, right? It's another person that's like really invested in himself, and right, like Goggins' time in ultra has sort of waned as a lot of his sort of heyday was 10 years ago. But I think authenticity wins, and we as consumers are hyper vigilant to being manipulated by brands trying to trick us into believing something that's false. We are like hyper vigilant. We're so scared of ads. We're scared of ads. Our brains actually block out ads on Instagram. When an ad pops up, your finger just goes a little bit faster. So I think we as consumers will just weed out the fakes and brands that are trying to fake it. And for me, that's why, I'm not trying to do paid ads. I'm not actually paying athletes because I think that you smell it. You just know that this person isn't picking up this thing because they feel it's authentically them. And for me, it's like, I want authenticity. And authenticity gets thrown around a lot, but I think it is really something as consumers, we are like looking for.
Yeah, I think authenticity and this idea of storytelling as well was a really common thread through a lot of the panels, and kind of pointing out that like oftentimes we have brands going to athletes, to influencers, to the creatives that work with them and giving them a narrow directive. And instead of working with them to say, okay, how can we come together? What is your story that we can tell? How do we help you fit within our brand image? Um, and so, I think that came up over and over again as feedback on the brand side.
Yeah, the perfect kind of intersection between creator and brand was when the values aligned, and then it's just authentic naturally.
Yeah.
It's not fake.
Yeah, I mean, real quickly, like Helen Mino Faulkner today did a bingo event. And I think that speaks to Hoka's willingness to allow Helen to be herself. I talked to her about it. She's like, I love bingo. I was like, that's weird. But that's you. And
Yeah.
and it showed up. She likes coffee and bingo. She did cold brew and bingo.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think that's just weird and cool. And that Hoka allows her to do that and have that space and not be like, no, we're doing a shakeout run. Please show up and talk on the microphone and wear the new shoe.
Yeah, it was allowing her to be herself. We saw some of her personality with that. So yeah, no, that was really cool. Next up was how to build a trail super shoe, which I think some people walked out of because they thought it was an on brand, sponsored spot, and technically it was an on sponsored spot. But I sat in, and um, one of the kind of Jeff Colt's hot take was that athletes are going to be leaving brands because they want to run in this shoe, and he said that athletes are already trying to do that. So what do you think?
I've definitely heard a lot of people saying the praises for the super shoe. That being said, you're talking about, what is it, two new shoes, a super shoe and kind of a non-pro version. In when you consider the rest of the line of shoes, I don't know that people are leaving, right? I think people might be hush hush using this shoe, but I don't know that you're going to see people necessarily, not a large majority of people leaving for just one shoe when you've got, a couple more years of products to really see if their trail shoes are going to work overall.
Yeah, and I don't think like for sponsoring TrailCon the event as a title sponsor, I don't think they had a great presence in town. They had that pop up which was down kind of on the way to the other exhibition center, but all the vibes were in the main strip, and I think Precision Fuel and Hydration owned it. Like they got the best bang for buck in the world. Like they were in every shot.
I think we give Hoka a lot of shit for doing that takeover style of brand marketing in the way that kind of Precision did this time. But if On wanted to maximize their opportunity in launching this shoe, they did need to do something like that. They couldn't have their tent outside of the main hub. Like, I expected more for sure.
Yeah, because we look at Precision as maybe like more of a challenger brand, so it's like okay, they can go a bit more risque. What did you think of like On's coverage or sponsorship visibility?
The way they showed up felt like how they showed up in TRE, a 2-story, big build out, science based,
Corporate?
corporate,
Mm-hmm.
like little corpo vibes, science, little vibe, like a lab vibe kind of. I don't know. I think footwear in general has a hard time selling in that sort of space where you're like, we're a running shoe, and here's a booth about a shoe. It just doesn't, like, for me, it doesn't really translate. I think Precision absolutely crushed it with the sweat testing and the 100-meter dash. They like made a moment within a moment that was photographable, exciting, and unique. And it really, and then on top of that, offering consumers sweat testing for free. I mean, slam dunk, and they have a great product.
Yeah, I did not know that they were doing the sodium sweat test for free. I don't even think they advertised that or.
Was it free or was it $125?
Or was it not free? It wasn't free. Sorry.
But accessible, right?
Accessible.
Like they're building out all sides of what they offer and they're telling their story.
Yeah, the 100-meter dash was the only thing I filmed that day. I filmed that. I filmed every race in slow mo just because, for like 90 minutes of the day, that was where the vibes were. And down at the other end of the time after it, who was down around there? Like Normal and Never Second. Oh my God, the town down there was totally quiet. Nothing.
I think it's also first year trying to figure out where crowds are going to be, and I think on and TrailCon just didn't predict that the main panel would be actually where the most people were, and everyone's at the coffee bar all day long, so being where Normal and Never Second are, that would theoretically be a good place to be, but the reality is everyone's sort of huddled in that area right around the panels.
And then coming back to On, they also said on the stage that Jermaine uh, has been running in the On shoe or tried the On shoe as early as 2023 when he was a North Face athlete. I thought interesting. I also thought you're saying it on stage.
Yeah, it's not a great look in terms of like building bridges and the community aspects that we hope even between brands to see in trail running.
Yeah. And maybe the last thing on that I got to throw out there is Nike probably should have taken more like at TrailCon as well. Like they got to do they had like a tent in the square or in the town, but felt like maybe they could have done more since they're doing something officially. It maybe could have been bigger.
Yeah, I wonder if there were just restrictions in like the levels of sponsorship because they did sponsor the Trail Running Hall of Fame evening, and it felt like it was actually very minimally branded for Nike.
Well, noted on that, it never, like, they talked about being the Hall of Fame in the initial announcement, but when we were there, it was just TrailCon Awards.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had the ACG logo and everything, and that was kind of the extent of how they.
Yeah, they walked back from the Hall of Fame sort of statement, and it's
Yes.
just the TrailCon Awards.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it
that's fair.
was in the description when you clicked into the details on the website. They called it TrailCon Awards, but then it did mention Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So not sure about why that has happened. Next up on the agenda, community builders. Any thoughts on that segment?
I mean, as someone who does this a lot locally, that was one of the ones that I wanted to go to. It's there are certain problems that I grapple with building a community, especially in a mountain town, where we lack certain things, but we're trying to support those things. So I found it good for kind of recognizing that running communities and clubs everywhere deal with some of the same problems. It was interesting to see how they solve them differently. And so that's kind of what I took away from that.
Yeah, I thought I didn't have much of a note on that one, but I did. There was one person, I forget who it was actually, but doesn't really matter. They said that they find it one of the critical parts of managing or owning or creating a community was the ability to actively think about future leaders.
Mm.
And that's something that I kind of don't think I think about it too much in Trail Talk, but I do try to, like, there are the people who stand out as like people who I think are responsible and have the right kind of idea about Trail Talk. And those are the people who are potentially administrators, you being one of them, maybe like mention Josh as well,
Mhm.
who is active in the community and has the kind of, he's interested in the same things and he's a contributor as well. So anything you want to add on building community?
It's interesting. As I started this brand, I have like one of my closest friends who works in the industry be like, where's your run club? You need to be building, look at Bandit. You need to start like getting people together under the banner of Tantrums. And for me, I was like, I like to run alone though, so I don't really want to do that. And that's not where my passion is. I think supporting communities is where my brand is. Like, oh, you have a run club? Like, I'll send you some vests. Like, do you want to do a demo? Do you have a community? I want to support your community. And I think that Bandit is like sort of obviously that's where they've started their whole thing. And as now we're seeing sort of people turn against run clubs. I wonder how Bandit will grow up a little bit and what their next thing is going to be if run clubs and community just becomes a little bit, shrinks a little bit, and people make a smaller crew. And it's not about 300, 400, Venice run clubs, 1,000 people. I think within Venice, I'll be like, oh, maybe I can go run with my 10 friends. I think for me, it's about supporting communities from afar instead of building one around my brand.
I think the run club thing has got to a stage where it's maybe branching out into different types of run clubs. And I think that's something that will continue. So there was the run club, and now there's the run dating club, the coffee club, the run drinking club, and the offshoots like that. There's the various run clubs that then they set up like a trail arm, and the club itself might have, 100 people on a Thursday night, but maybe there's 15 of them go to the trails on a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's something that we're seeing with the clubs. It's still like a way of people coming together, but then they maybe find their people in the group and create something else themselves. So it's also like, I think the whole run club thing is taken over from the athletics club, certainly in the UK, where people would have that was community. That was the original run community, was the running clubs, the athletic clubs, and now it's more that's just this new version of it, I think. Anything else you want to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've seen multiple rounds of like the run club boom, and then you turn it into, okay, you've been introduced to the sport, now you find the community. I think that's just like a natural cycle that happens. Each time we try to bring more people in, then they find their niche. And I think that's a healthy system.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Next up was the tearjerker, Topher Gaylor, and the what was it called? The Future of Western States. Uh, it was emotional,
Mm.
and there was he was emotional. Like he had to look away from the audience and kind of like scratch the side of his eye. So like the guy is super emotional about Western states. What did you think of the presentation? It was kind of corporate in all the right ways. Like it was really professional.
Yeah, Toph is one of the most passionate people about this race and just about the sport and the community in general. And I was talking with him after, and he recognized he had a ton he wanted to cover. He wanted to cover, the women's part of the race. And, I gave him the feedback that like it really flowed really well. He covered a lot of bases, but it didn't feel overwhelming. I think for me, the most inspiring part, honestly, was the kind of first part where they really talked about the huge volunteer effort that goes into the race.
Yeah.
They gave some metrics behind that. And that was one of the most impactful things for me when I think about, okay, community, the sustainability of the sport, that level of involvement and care is, I think, what got me the most.
Anything you want to add on like the Western states piece?
I actually got to meet Topher for the first time yesterday, just in passing, and it was just really just even hearing him talk for like a few minutes about the race and what's going on. He was like, "Oh, this dude, like, this is his passion. Or I'm passionate about hydration vests. Like, this is his passion." And I think it's really important to notice that Western States has evolved and modernized in good ways, and there are a lot of races that haven't been able to modernize and be successful. And this is a platform for our sport that is something that it's precious and prestigious and something that we all want to be a part of. I mean, who here doesn't want to run Western States? You don't want to run it?
I mean, I don't like heat, so that's my excuse.
You'd rather run Tour de Jean?
Yeah.
That's why. You can get extreme heat, extreme bad weather, and you get to do it over multiple days.
Yeah, that makes me happy. But I'm always happy to crew and pace this race.
Yeah. I mean, it's a special thing to be part of this in any capacity, and crewing and pacing Ricky will be like
Extraordinary.
it'll be amazing.
But if you look at the five others, first 500 milers, like none of them are in the same place. You look at Leadville is kind of like, I don't know what it is, but it doesn't quite have the same place in like the heart of ultra as we have. Old Dominion, Wasatch, and AC 100 being the other like oldest hundreds. And they just don't, Western States is just on another level. And it's because their ability to modernize but do it in a way that felt respectful.
Mm-hmm.
I think I totally agree with that, but I also think Leadville lost their way because they were sold off to another company. So it,
Mhm.
you know, it stopped progressing and to, what made it what it is not was not possible anymore. So it just became this corporate event. And, there's been jokes for several years now that it's the influencer race. And, we hear this talked about with Coca-Cola as it potentially could go the same way, but Jamil is at the head of it, so I think he will steer it in the right direction. But yeah, I think Leadville would still be up there if it wasn't for
Yeah.
that sale. Next up on the agenda, the rise of athlete management. Did you have any interesting notes on that? I didn't make too many, apart from some of yeah, no, I didn't actually make any notes on that at all. And that was
Yeah.
the last up for day one for me.
There were a couple more after it, all of which I attended, but I think for me, again, when I talked about like the through line of authenticity and storytelling, that came up back again in this talk, especially from the perspective of an athlete who's looking to match with the brand. There's a lot of talk about values alignment, about learning how brands and athletes or influencers or creatives can help each other versus here's our boilerplate contract, this is what you get. Um, the flip side is now fight for your specific needs. You can probably get them. You can get that pregnancy clause. You can get that, unique clause in your contract that's not just about you have to go to UTMB races. And so really trying to bring like the humanity into the sport as it professionalizes.
Yeah. What is your thoughts on that?
I mean, one of these big topics that I'm in, like everyone's a billboard, right? So athletes are the biggest billboards we have in a sport, and the races are also billboards and media platforms. And as these agents and athletes sort of embrace, they're more than just a hanger for clothing, and like they're actually they have the ability to like push out a message that is their own message. You look at the Boulder Boys or Max or Helen, these people that are creating channels to directly connect to consumers. There's a value that is significantly larger than a first place at something like, I won't name a race, but like one of these B tier races. Like, would you rather have Matt Daniels uh on Boulder Boys every week, or would you rather have him finishing in third place at some 50K? And so his finish doesn't matter anymore. So the value is now becomes intrinsic to their media platforms and not to their finish, which I think is an amazing just modernization. That's not ultra. That's just 2025.
Mm-hmm.
But Matt is someone who talks well. Like he commentates well on the sport, so he's in that position where he can, and that platform, the Boulder Boys, with all of the guys just chatting about the sport in just a totally authentic way. Like they're just sticking a camera in front of themselves and having some sort of agenda, and we can all connect with that because we like to do that in our groups anyway. So yeah, I think that's an interesting point. Anything else, Chrissy?
I think that pretty much sums it up. I think that our overarching concept is that like individualization. Some athletes, as you're saying, they're great advocates for their sport on their own. You just need to support them. Some aren't, as we say, some have no vibes and they're happy to fit into a traditional role. And so it's just, this whole talk was just about making those right connections.
Yeah. Did you sit in on the athlete panel at the end with Jim, Tabor Hemming, Hillary Allen, and Hayden Hawks?
Mhm.
Which was that the professionalization of trail running teams, or which session was that?
I think it was after. Was there another one after? I mean, that panel was really about like their personal stories. The questions asked were how they got into trail running. And so it was a lot of like hearing about their entries into the sport, their experiences, their lessons learned. It was more just kind of conversational, I would say.
Yeah, but one of the like I thought Jim was amazing on the mic. Like he hogged it, but we were all enjoying it. was like, no, just leave the mic with Jim. Meanwhile, Hayden's at the other side of the stage, like sinking into the seat. When's my turn? But Jim's story and how he got into trail was actually pretty cool. I knew about the army and the traveling around and stuff, but he said that after his time in the army, he just wanted to connect more with nature. He wanted to kind of de-stress from it all, and so he wanted more outdoors. And he initially thought that was going to be hiking, but then he found that I can just get further and see more things if I run. And then eventually he got turned on to seeing about like Mike Wolf and the guys in that region in Montana.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, I want to race where those guys are racing. And he said this, he told this story that he looked at the entries for this race to fight and found out where they were racing. And he didn't look to see which distance. There was like a 30K and a 12K. So he just thought, well, all the fast guys, the good guys, they have to be doing the 12K. Because he's like, nobody at track does the 10K. So I entered the 12K and I won it or whatever. But when I got there to the race, I realized that they were doing the 30K. And I'm like, why are they doing the 30K? And I found out this is the only sport that the good people, like the pros, the elites, they go longer. And then he cracked this joke, which I don't think he meant to at the time, but it triggered a laugh. He was like, nobody that's good at the 5K does the steeplechase.
Meanwhile, half of trail running has come from the steeplechase.
Steeplechase, yeah. So I thought that was funny, and like the crowd loved that. And throughout his story, he was like, "Yeah, I could tell this. No, I'll not hog the mic anymore. I could tell this other story." And like, no, hand the mic off. So give Jim the mic and an audience, and he's like a whole new person. What did you think of that session?
Yeah, he definitely took a few questions to warm up just to get comfortable.
I missed the start of it, so I come in when he was on the mic.
Yeah, so you could definitely see him kind of getting more comfortable, and as he started talking and storytelling, he just kept wanting to go in these little tangents, and it was a really cool insight into Jim as a person that we don't get often. I feel like, he trains seriously, and so I think some of the brands have a hard time penetrating that. But when we do get these stories directly from him, it's really cool and it's really relatable. But you could also see towards the end of the talk, he started getting less comfortable again. I think it was when they were maybe talking about injuries and stuff, and you could tell, like, there's just sensitivities, like, understandably. And but that was probably the most valuable thing out of that session, I think, is people getting to see Jim the person.
That was the best part of the day. Like, it was fun, and it was a very corporate feel up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things we learned about Jim was that after Chianti that flared up the knee, he actually got PRP injections, which is what I got in my foot,
Mm-hmm.
which you're kind of doing a reset after that because you can't run for a period of time and also the way PRP works is it sort of takes a couple of months to then the body starts healing itself. So we learned that about his injury. Then Hayden Hawks was asked about some stuff, and he went into his injury, which was some corrective surgery to clean up something around the leg. And kind of maybe one of the things, I didn't make a note of it at the time, but the general feeling was that he was in quite a negative headspace. And I think we could all feel like the room sank when Hayden was kind of telling the story, because we could see that the guy is down in dumps a little bit. Did you get that?
Definitely, you could feel that he was bummed out, and it was reflected in how he was talking, his body language, and, like, it also made us kind of, like, emotional and feel bad for him.
Yeah. Anything else from that session? Well, at least Hillary Allen kind of perked him up afterwards, because she took the mic after Hayden and she said, like, obviously Hillary Allen falling to near death and having reconstruction a couple of times. And when she got the mic, she kind of reset the room by saying, I've got a book about that. You should read it. Like, coming back from injury. So that was good. Let's move on to day 2. We are 40 minutes in. and I had to make sure that I got up to Palisades for the stage that you were on. I think you were on at 10:15. It was
10:30.
10:30.
10:35.
So that was I was an hour away in Reno. I had to get here for that time. So talk a little bit about that stage, the theme, and what was your takeaways from it?
So challenger brands was the topic, and I was up there with the CEO from Speedland, the CEO from uh, Hood to Mount to Coast,
Mount the Coast, yeah.
and Kyle from Raid, and myself. And it's interesting looking at Speedland, which has been around for a while now, and I sort of this is definitely a challenger brand, but they're an established brand. You look at Hood to Coast or Mount to Coast, definitely not an established brand, trying to figure it out. Kyle, who's just seen amazing success over like about 2.5 years in market, and his belt's just like flying. And then me, who's come to market in the last 3 months, I would say I've been online and really shipping the only product for the best in the last 6 weeks. So we're all in different places and we all have different points of view. But for me, just being like invited, and obviously I paid for a booth, and I think they generally try to get everyone with a booth on some stage in some place or form. So this is where I sat. But just that being invited meant a lot for me personally as a brand, just to show up and talk and put my brand on that platform. I was honestly nervous with Kyle there because he sounds really good and polished and is like a businessman. And then Yeti is a little bit hard to understand, but he's like a science guy talking about foam development. And then the guy from Speedland, I forgot his name, Steven, maybe. Kevin was talking about making a unique product. He's a footwear guy, comes from Nike. I think what's interesting about my perspective on there is like I'm the only one that lines up for ultras, I think. And I know Yeti's not. Kyle runs. He lives in Aspen. I know he's a runner, but I don't think he runs ultra. And then Kevin, I think, is just a footwear guy that found in a a lane that I think works. Maybe he's run some ultras, but like I think it's interesting being on a panel at Western States and being the only person that's really doing the sport. Like I think it's an advantage. I don't think of it like as a bad thing for them. It's just an advantage for me. Like because I walk down the streets and I know all these people and I know how to talk to them. And I know what the consumer wants. And I think it's just quicker and easier to develop, market, and brand a product because I'm marketing to myself. I wish I talked about that on the panel too. But I don't want to throw shade on those guys. Everyone has an opportunity to build products and sell product. That's not I don't have a monopoly on that just because I run ultras.
Yeah, but I think everyone on the panel, you got to respect everything that they're doing. You know what they're doing. They're up there, and I wanted to be there not to hear from you, but to hear from everybody. And I thought the is it the CEO from Mount the Coast?
Yeah, founder. He's the founder.
Founder.
It's his.
I thought he spoke really well, passionate and engineering. He was very interested and he was able to communicate that well also, but also kind of put himself out there as being a little bit vulnerable as well. Like we don't really know, but if we're doing something that you don't like, please let us know. We would love to like learn from this and get better, which is kind of a brave thing for someone like that to go up on stage and say during TrailCon. So I like that. Were you at this session? Yeah. So what did you think of it?
I think for me, one of the common themes was talking about different ways in which challenger brands take risk. There was a lot of talk about, at different stages of your business, what is it, creating your idea and your product that's your risk? Is it, how you scale that's your risk? What do you do that like, is no risk? For example, you with the way you outreach, like there's no financial risk to reaching out to people's DMs, but that is part of like the risk you're taking in creating a new product. So for me, that was a really valuable contrast between, again, these brands at different stages and what they think of as they grow.
I liked what you said on stage because you're kind of just, you get who you are and you're just happy to say, I am Adam, and you said like stoner friendly, was a skateboarder, and I think that comes across in Tantrums as well. And like one of the things I wanted to ask you was like, how has Tantrums become the pack that everybody wants? How's it been injected into the vibes? Because it has.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for noticing it. I mean, again, the fact that I was invited to be here because of the panel and like being accepted into Trail Talk and the community at large, um, I think it comes from passion, right? I think it comes from a passion to build a product that I think is missing. I identified that there's no performance packs that are built for hot weather racing. And that's what the pack is. That's what the Crest is. The Crest 6 is for hot weather racing. It's a slim back, so you non-required kit. Like UTMB, you need a different pack because you have a required kit. Western American racing, all you need something to carry water. The pros are moving fast enough. They don't need to carry much. They just need something to move fast. So really trying to minimize and, I sacrifice durability. I sacrifice durability for a light, slim, fast pack. And that's really why I think the pro field and elite field has adopted me, because I'm passionate about the sport and I was able to identify an opportunity.
And one of the things you've said about the pack that I didn't even know was it's the lightest pack on the market.
They can carry 1.5 liters. So you look at,
right.
So you're looking at Satisfy at 128 grams, the S Lab Ultra 10 at 130, and we're at 135, but neither of those can carry 1.5 liters in the back.
Yeah, because you have two 600 ml bottles.
No, the back, in the back panel.
Oh, in the back as well?
The back, so you can carry 1.5 liters off a hanger in the back, because neither of the Satisfy or the Solomon S Lab have like a pocket big enough for a liter in the back.
But nobody with vibes will use a bladder.
I mean, I will when I'm on a 3-hour run
okay.
And it's 100 degrees out.
All right. Well, all right.
No, because
that's thick then.
But most pros have to do loops around their cars, right? That's how you do it. In hot weather, you keep looping back to your car and refilling. You create an aid station. But I don't know. I enjoy this. I enjoy running out in the woods. Like I want to run in the woods. So I want to go. I don't want to go 4 miles or whatever, 6 miles out and turn around. I want to go 15.
Yeah. Anything else from the Challenger brand stage?
I would say I've noticed, and when we're talking, there's kind of two different approaches these challenger brands are taking. They're either coming from a place of experience with those big brands and they're challenging because they're not in those big brands anymore, or they're coming with an idea to solve a problem, right? I would say like you and Raid were on that side, maybe Mount to Coast and Speedland were on the other side. And I think you get quicker growth and touch points when you're doing what you and Raid are doing versus, the vulnerability you have to have saying, I want to create this product, but I don't know. I need feedback on how to make it work for you. That lead time is going to be longer to getting to really a honed in product.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great take on that. How are we doing on time? Yeah, we'll run for another 10 minutes. Maybe last thing on the Challenger brands thing. Mount the Coast said that they started their marketing and they kind of got the shoes out to every influencer that they could think of or find, and there was maybe there was backlash or some negativity that came from it, which I thought was interesting because they only reached out to me like 2 months ago. So, uh, I don't know where I fall. Am I part of the new strategy or part of the old strategy? So, I mean, let us know. One of the other sessions I liked was up on the main stage in the village center, and who was on it? Billy Yang, Hillary Yang, Tony with Sony. What's his surname?
Di Pasquale.
And who else was on that?
Was Sarah Attar on that one? Was the other
photographer? So I didn't know her. I wasn't aware of her, and maybe like thinking about time as well. One of the takeaways that I had from that was I don't really know Tony with the Sony. I know who he is. I know what he looks like. I know the circles that he moves in, But he said, everyone else was kind of having this thing where they were talking about the increase in photographers and content creators and people with a camera, and they're kind of like, it's creating this media storm with a kind of like a negative tone
Mm.
to this happening. And Tony came at it from a totally different perspective, which was so like, I don't know him, so it was totally refreshing for me. But he said that maybe as photographers, we need to maybe take the wide angle lens and capture some of that because that's where the sport is and that's part of the sport.
Hmm.
And I just thought, I must like you. I need to go and say to you that I really like that take. What did you think of that session and maybe what Tony was talking about?
Yeah, I think he came with a couple, really thought out points and pieces of feedback, but it's all with a kind of collaborative lens. And so, to what you're speaking to, I think, I don't know if it was him or somebody else that was saying, hey, we have this big media storm, as you're saying, but why don't we like talk to each other while we're out there? Say, hey, what's your angle? Can I do this with this athlete? And then I'll get back out of your way. And, it's taking what we're trying to build, on the athlete side of the sport and just the experience that we have at races. And it's doing it, from all sides. So I found that really valuable as well. I think he had another point. Again, it goes back to like relationships with brands about like, hey, you can't expect us to just come in for one project, like fit your vision perfectly and then leave again. Like the same way that you work with athletes throughout the year, let's all work together, figure out what our visions are, where we mesh, and develop that together so that you have the best possible product. And we're all learning.
Yeah, no, that was great. What do you think?
Tony is like been a collaborator from day one. Oftentimes here during this week or whatever the last few days here, I've thought about where I was a year ago. And a year ago, I showed up and I met Anna Lavin for the first time in person. And I had a shoot with her and Tony up at Donner Pass. And and at that point, like, you didn't know it existed. You didn't know it existed. There was no product. There was one sample on the planet. It was on Anna's back. And to go from and he helped me create the first content that was shared with the world. And I continue to use some of those assets. And Tony's been an amazing collaborator. He's somebody that I've worked with numerous times, and like he's at all the races, he's capturing the footage. And I think speaking to that like relationship between the photographers, cultivating something and both growing together has been something that Tony's been just an amazing collaborator on. And I'm grateful for Tony's part in my story.
Is he instrumental in how I know Tantrums?
Yeah.
Really?
For sure.
Yeah.
All the pictures that came out of, well, Shit in the Woods, Mike McDonald took a shot of Anna on the escarpment, which is one of the photos I love to use. But basically, those two photos are the only like. There's like a bunch of photos from me and Tony and Anna, and that photo of Anna were the mostly what I used for the first 3 months after that, like as like sort of talking about the brand and the pictures that I really liked the best. And then things started to pop up with Finn and Brett sort of starting to use it. But those were the first assets I really had.
Yeah, it really shows the importance of these photographers that are in the sport with, again, the right intentions that align with ours, with the sport in general, and they're just documenting the shit that's happening that we're all, into as well, but they're just doing it, with a camera in front of their face. So I think it's such an important thing.
And race photography is something that's like so important to the sport. Like these Howie Stern is like the OG, right? Like they're these people and they literally are our narrative for so much of these races. And like, you can't, it's not like basketball where you get to like watch every second, right? We capture these singular moments and they're transported across the internet, and these 10 or 15 photographers globally are responsible for that.
Yeah. And all of the photographers that we would know that are important in the sport or have had done important work. I've been here for Broken Arrow, TrailCon, Western States. It's a place to be. And some of them will also be over in Europe for UTMB. Like, I was here for Broken Arrow and just going up the ascent. He was like, "Oh, how you doing? How you know?" All of these photographers, and then the same. That was on the ascent, and then the same on Sunday for the 23K. Like I was just trying to make sure I wasn't in the way of any of the photographers, and I'll just go on a bit further, so I'm behind this photographer, and then you get round the corner or to the false summit, and there's another photographer. So I ended up near the ridge, but one of the things that was said on that same stage was, I think in the media briefing, which I wasn't part of, I wasn't registered media for Broken Arrow. They said, I think Scott Ruckus said, you know, we're all in this together. Just say hi to your fellow media people, photographers. You know, where's your shot? Make sure you're not in it. You know, but just talk,
Yeah.
and we can all sort it out. Because like in person, it's just natural, right?
Yeah. I think there's a tendency, especially in like traditional sport media, to like try and stake your claim and get your shot against, everybody else. And I think the way that our media is building is very different that and very reflective of our sport.
Yeah. Right, let's start to wrap it up a little bit. One thing forgot to mention from early on, I missed the initial first session on day one, but one of the stats that was highlighted was hiking's growth is 5%, trail running's growth is 8%. So I thought it was nice to get a metric to know that, okay, so it's 8%, because we all know what good growth is, and 8% is decent. Um, and then we finished up day two with what was the Hall of Fame, became the TrailCon Awards. Couple of things. Buzz Burrell, icon in the sport, obviously still kicking, still doing stuff, inventor of FKT and loads of firsts on now iconic routes. Uh, got up on stage, and he was just all of the banter with dad vibes in a great way. I think everyone just was like feel good seeing him up there. And then Hal Kerner as well was inducted in, and he was so nervous. Like I just absorbed that nervousness as well, and I was touched by it. But because normally we see Hal, and he's just like this larger than life smile, and it just like the happiness oozes out of him, whether you know him or not. And I don't know him personally, but he was just so nervous up in that stage, and again that was nice and special. What did you guys, Adam? What did you think of the Hall of Fame or the awards or whatever it's gonna be called?
I missed a lot of it, honestly. I had some work to take care of. So I showed up toward maybe the last three recipients. I missed both of those. I showed up for like Ann Trayson. That's her last name.
Tristan, yeah.
Trayson. That's where I sort of saw. So I got Killian. Basically, I got to see Killian.
Oh, the most important bit.
Yeah, the greatest trail runner of all time.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool that our sport is creating an occasion around the greats, and that I think shows maturity in the sport. Looking back, giving great due to the people that are from our past, and I know that Anna Gibson got like the Future Award, and sort of putting her on a pedestal. I think that's nice. I think she's an amazing athlete, and it is the future of our sport, especially at that age. I was talking to Scott Jurek yesterday. He said he started running ultras at 20, but yeah, I think it was nice. It was nice. They talked a lot, which I thought was nice. It wasn't like a normal like Academy Award show where you like had 90 seconds. Like the award presenters talked for a while, and then the person receiving it talked for a while as well. So you got to hear what they had to say, and they got to like own it a little bit. I thought it was sweet and better than I expected. And he got a cool little T-shirt at the end.
Yeah, did I get a T-shirt? Oh, the Nike one. Yeah, I got the Nike one. And Sally McRae, co-host, I thought she was great, great personality, talks effortlessly on the mic. I think also one thing I'd like to point out is look how much Debo has evolved. I think he's really polished now. Like I enjoy listening to the trailgating and his kind of prognostication on how things will unfold. I thought he was good on stage. He didn't hold the mic too long. He handed it off to Sally loads. And going back to like the well and pillars and freight trail, it's kind of cool seeing that trajectory. Like if trail running gets its news show, Debo has to be the anchor.
1,000,000%. He's like the mouth of the sport, and he's a good mouth, and he comes from the sport, so like he's authentic. Which we keep on talking about it, but like it means a lot.
Yeah. Last thing from me, the varsity jackets, not what you call them in America.
Mm-hmm.
They were cool. I loved that. So American. But as I've said multiple times this week, whenever you're not American and you come to America, you want America. We just want all the American shit when we're here. We just want to soak it up.
USA,
Yeah.
USA.
We grew up watching American TV too. Do you know what I mean? So, what did you think of the show?
Yeah, I think it was very well produced, well rehearsed. I agree with like the authenticity piece of like people are allowed to share their stories, but it didn't go too far. It was felt curated and, as I said, rehearsed. Um, I think the varsity jackets and just the way they honored everybody in general was awesome. My like bit of feedback was like, don't put TrailCon on the back. If you want this to go beyond the sport or at least penetrate the rest of the sport, that has to be, whatever it says, Trail Running Hall of Fame, Trail Running Awards, so that everybody can kind of understand and it feels a little bit less like you're marketing your own like speaking place and box.
What would it say on that varsity jacket normally? The person's name or the club or the team?
You'd have like your high school representation of your high school on the front, and then your name across the back.
Yeah.
And then you'd have the sports that you play on your arms.
Yeah.
So it feels like maybe the right way to do this would be to have the names added after the fact. Or, of course, they know about it weeks in advance. So
Yeah.
maybe just have the athlete's name.
That's like the traditional way. I think the jackets themselves weren't particularly a problem. I think if this is supposed to be an award show, like there should be an award, like a physical representation on a jacket. For me, it's like, you're the greatest trail runner of all time. Here's a jacket. I don't know.
But they also all have, cougars and other awards on their mantles already. So how do you differentiate this kind of honor?
Yeah, that's true. A big swoosh.
Nike branded award, but
and they did have a little moment for the Nike marketing person talk, but it didn't feel overly like marketed to.
Yeah, well, he introduced it in the same vein as the head guy at On the previous day that, I'm between you and the free drink and food, so I'll keep it sweet. And he thought it was the sponsors both times used their opportunities to thank the people that were putting on the event, to thank Debo and the Free Trail team and the others involved. So they used their time well, and they took 2 minutes. So.
Mm-hmm.
And I think test and learn, right? You never get anything right the first time you do it. So they're trying to do something. I think their intentions are correct, and who they honored was correct, and they'll figure the rest out. And like, we need to give everybody a little bit of grace.
Yeah. And we do hear that, Debo and advertising and the ad reads and stuff, but I still know that the guy has the intentions in the right place, and that's the most important thing. Like that's the 99% most important thing is that the right intentions are there.
Yeah, I think the whole thing is an incredible next step in what TrailCon was. The amount of information that was in 2 days, like at points, was overwhelming, but in a good way. The amount of networking that was able to be had between people who knew each other but don't get enough time with each other or making new connections was super valuable for the whole time. And as you said, they'll learn, they'll iterate. It's a lot to squeeze in 2 very busy weeks, and I think they did a really commendable job with that.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned Brendan, but Brendan from Alpenglow Sports is really behind this thing, and he put on Broken Arrow and TrailCon within 5 days. Like, and that's like probably the biggest thing of his whole, like 2 different events that are completely different with sponsors and the whole nine and permitting for 2 different events. I mean, kudos to Brendan.
Yeah, there was a running joke that, especially the first day, that we all cheer on Brendan, but there's like no amount of appreciation that can really communicate the amount of work that he's put into this sport.
Yeah, and Broken Arrow was amazing. Like I haven't said it on the pod, but the finish line, the course where people were crewing, the vendors, the cafes, the toilets, the parking, everything was at your fingertips. Like you could just drive to Olympic Valley and do minimal steps and participate in one of the races. So it was very easy and just was like an outstanding show, basically.
Yeah, and it doesn't happen without just, again, incredible professionalization of the sport and the people that are now in it and are experienced at what they do.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, we've cut a call time because we got to get to race briefing. Thanks, guys, for being part of the show. Let us know in the comments your hot takes on anything that we've talked about. And we got to get out there into 30-degree, sorry, that's European money, 30-degree heat and start the vibes for the rest of the weekend. So, peace.